ArchiCAD is one of the best softwares I personally believe that anybody can use in our profession as architects or designers. If you haven't used ArchiCAD before and this is the first time you're jumping onto ArchiCAD 25, this is the video for you. What's going on, guys? My name is David Tomic and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, firstly, thank you so much for joining me. On this channel, we talk all things technology and architecture. That usually revolves around ArchiCAD, ArchiCAD 25, technology reviews, apps, and everything in between. If that's something that interests you, smash the subscribe button down below. Today, we're going to be talking about ArchiCAD 25, and as if it was your very first time ever jumping onto ArchiCAD. So if you're a regular subscriber to this channel looking for a good ArchiCAD tutorial, this isn't it for you today. This is all about the first time subscribers, the guys looking to dive into ArchiCAD as far as they can go, but have absolutely no idea where to start. If that's you, this is the perfect video for you. There's also a bunch of links down below if you want to check them out. There's a Discord chat with an ever-growing community. There's some digital downloads to help guide you through your sketch design and construction drawing checklists, and even a Patreon link if you want access to all of my ArchiCAD files that I do for YouTube and create on these tutorials. Anyway, enough of my rambling. Let's turn around to these two screens and get started. All right, so this is the first time you've opened up ArchiCAD 25. You've gotten to this main screen where it asks you for a brand new project. You can start with any of the templates available to you. You can browse downloaded templates from other people. You can check out a whole bunch of different things. But in my personal opinion, you're more than likely going to start with the Australian Select template if you're in Australia, or any of your available templates. Work environment, you can go through any of these, but we're going to adjust it to make sure it suits at least how I work the best and how I think it is the most practical. Obviously, you can change your work environment as much as you need, but we'll get into that. So let's start by pressing create the new project and dive straight into what ArchiCAD 25 is. So once ArchiCAD 25 is open, you will see this main screen, and it is what we basically look at all day, every day. On the left-hand side here, we have our main palette. It basically encapsulates everything that we're going to use from a design and documentation point of view. Everything from our walls to our wall ends, our doors, windows, window corners. You can go through them one by one to see exactly what they are. We'll go through them in a little bit more detail individually soon. And down below, you're going to have more of your documentation tools. So things like grid lines, dimensioning tools, text, fill, basically anything that's 2D is going to be here, and anything that is more than likely 3D is going to be here. I say it in that way because lamp tools aren't always 3D. Some objects can be 2D, but that's just getting into the nitty-gritty of it. On the right-hand side over here, at the moment, we have a relatively good setup going on. If you don't see what I see over here on the right-hand side, simply come across to the top, go Window, go Pallets, and ensure that your palette list looks exactly the same as mine. I don't have too many things open. It is predominantly the toolbox, info, status bar, the Navigator, which is this main section over here, the trace and reference, which is this top layer, and last but not least, I always turn on the renovation layer. So that installs this element down the bottom. What you're going to see on this right-hand panel is our trace and reference layer. If you're looking at the ground floor and want to see what's on the footings, you can activate the trace and reference layer to see what we've drawn on the floor below, floor above, or any selected floor. You can activate it, change the color of the trace reference. You can change the opacity as well, and you can also change the active color so it can contrast better. If you're struggling to see through the transparency layers, you have these different options of hiding and showing different layers. They each do individual things depending on what you're trying to achieve. You might be able to click through these and find the best view for you in each individual circumstance. Moving down this sidebar, we have our main Navigator. This is how we work our way through ArchiCAD 25 and through the projects in general. As you can see, the Australian Select template has sketch design, design development, construction, exchange and coordination, and a bunch of other files created by default. If we open up sketch design, for example, it's going to give us our survey plan, our location plan, our site plan, and everything in our sketch plans, sections, and elevations. So the easiest way to understand this section here is plans are actually defined in our Navigator, whilst sections and elevations are created on our workspace. If we wish to create a secondary floor plan, we can come into our project chooser here, go show organizer, which will open up our main organizational palette. So the project map is the main house in 3D, and the view map is the 2D floor plan. The view map is basically where we customize everything to suit our needs. So if we don't like this layout they've created, we can go ahead and actually create our own custom folders that house different plans and all sorts of different elements. The best way I can give you an example is if, for instance, you have an alteration addition project where you need to draw demolition plans, existing plans, and proposed plans. That isn't exactly showcased here, but you have the ability to create those files. If you wanted to create another layer, another level, we would simply press Command 7 or Control 7, depending on what system you are, and adjust the story settings. So as a very basic example, if we go insert below, type footings, and just for the purposes of argument, go minus 172. This is in millimeters in Australia. Clicking OK, you'll see that story automatically pops up here. So if you're doing a very large project, like an apartment complex or a huge multi-story residential building, that could be a commercial, mixed-use, hospital, whatever it might be, you can go ahead and press Control 7, Command 7, open up these story settings, and simply break it down into as many or as little floor plans as you need. If, for example, we wanted to drag this footings layer across to somewhere in this project map and it didn't automatically show up like it has been programmed here, we simply just click, drag, let go, and slot it wherever we want. I don't want that there, so I'll just quickly delete it and close this organizer page. Down below, we're going to find that renovation filter layer that I activated in the window settings, which basically just allows us to dictate if an object is existing to be demolished or if it's new. This is very useful in an alteration addition project, any old buildings that need a little bit of love, a little bit of attention. You can draw that existing building as existing, smack it as demolition, and then start drawing a new one, and you can quickly flick through those individual layers, those individual files basically, without having to duplicate the file. So you can quickly jump back to your existing plan, or just see your demolition plan, or just see your brand new plan. You don't actually have to go back and model and change in all sorts of different ArchiCAD files like we used to. That's just a very simple feature that's been around for a while. Underneath that is our renovation filters, and that's just simply how you dictate what's shown on your screen. If we go to our renovation filter options, we have basically a plethora of different options and different styles that we can choose from, adjust, change as we see fit. We can graphically override every single individual element, but that's really going into the details of ArchiCAD and probably something you don't need to worry about on day one. But it's good to know that this feature is available to you if, for some example, you wish your demolition lines to be blue instead of red for any particular reason. If we go and cancel out of all that and go back to our main toolbars up the top, you'll see we have our typical toolbars up the top. File hosts everything it usually does, and you can work your way through these to see everything that is available to you. To be honest, there isn't too many critical things you need to know about, but I will only go through the most important things in this toolbar that you'll probably use in day one or at least week one. First of all, open, close, save as, all very basic. You know how they work, you don't have to have them explained. Libraries and objects and library manager. This one is probably one of the most critical if you're importing any external libraries, if your company has libraries that they're importing into the project, if you're starting work for a brand new company and have never used ArchiCAD before, this is definitely something you're going to need to know. It's very critical. All you have to do is go find that folder with the libraries, import it, and ArchiCAD will do the rest. Now, coming back out of that and going to our info section under file and project info, the project info basically dictates everything about the project in a very simple and organized manner. If we type in the project name, the description, the project ID, or any of these details down here, we can simply replicate them later on by producing auto text. That is very, very useful to anybody doing a title block. It means they don't have to go through every single page and change the client's name, the client details, the page numbers, etc. They can do everything in this one project info space and it's all done and dusted. Again, if you're starting at a new firm using ArchiCAD, this is something you're probably going to have to know, because this is exactly how you're going to change all of those company details for that project and import all that new information. Continuing to move across in the edit menu, very simple, very basic stuff that I won't go too deep into. The only thing really is find and select, which the shortcut is Command F. This is a very, very useful tool in ArchiCAD. If you're looking for a wall, you can simply click on a wall, click this copy settings button and click the plus and it will find everything. You can go through, add multiple filters to this and really nail down your criteria to see exactly what you're looking for. It's something that I use more and more of every single day, and the more you start using this, the better you'll thank yourself in the future, because you'll be clicking less and less and just letting the computer do the work for you. View is a critical one that has a few different elements that are really important, because it basically dictates what you see on the screen and how you see it on the screen. If we go to our view options, you'll see these are the basic settings that are set up for me. This is the ArchiCAD Australia 25 template. So this is just what's basically always there for most people in Australia. Now, a lot of people have wall intersection problems. You might not want to see where your roof pivots. You might need to see your stair base lines. These are basically just things how they're displayed on your screen, not how they print out. The one thing I do turn off is true line weight. True line weight basically shows you exactly how thick that line is going to print out compared to everything else. I personally turn it off only because the template's been set up that I know each line weight quite well, and I don't need to know the line weights as thick bars. Instead, I can actually focus on the individual elements and the details. So that's something I turn off. You can turn this construction grid and an editing plane display off. If we jump to our 3D, you'll see I don't have them on, but if I come back to view and turn my editing plane off, for example, it shows up smack bang in 3D. I don't really use it, I don't really like it, I turn it off. It's completely up to you guys what you do with those settings. Moving further down in the view menu, there's probably not too much except your 3D view options down here if you want to look at your 3Ds in a perspective or an axonometric view. That isn't critical again to day one. It's something that you will experiment and use a lot more later down the track. I just completed an axonometric video in my last tutorial, so if you want to really dive deep into what is a relatively simple tutorial for beginners, that might be a good stepping stone after this video. But these two provide some good perspectives on how your 3Ds can look and what you can actually achieve with them. Moving into design, day one, again, you're probably not going to have to go through every single bit into this menu. The only thing I recommend you look into is story settings like we went to before, which is Control or Command 7, and also the connect and the solid element operations. Connect is going to allow you to trim walls to roofs and those sorts of things, and solid element operations is going to allow you to do that with much more control. The same goes for the rest of these titles up the top. There isn't really too much you need to worry about or focus on. It's just really diving too far into ArchiCAD for day one. It's not something you need to know. You will eventually find out what they do, what they are for, but day one, definitely not worth diving that far into it. You're just going to be overwhelmed and think this isn't worth jumping from whatever program I'm on right now. Next, we're going to have our main palette toolbars here, which we can adjust and change in our window menu. So if we go toolbars, you'll see these are the basic elements that I have ticked on. There isn't anything really else I need per se to be turned on over here. You can click on one of these, for example, let's go documentation tools, and it will give you everything that we have down here. If we close that box, come back up to window, toolbars, let's turn drafting aids on, and we'll see a different palette pop up in the middle of the screen. If we don't want it to be just floating like that, we can use our cursor and basically drag and drop it into where we want it to go. If we want to move it around, change it, we can do that as well, but for the time being, we're just going to leave it as is. So moving across, we have a whole bunch of different elements. Each one tells you what they are. So if you hover your mouse over it, you're going to be able to see what everything does. So for example, if we continue moving across, the parallel constraints are quite good. It allows you to do some flexibility with your 2D lines. Not really required, not too important at the start of the day. The save tool is always important, backwards and forwards. Again, this toolbar probably won't be too highly used on your first day. You're mainly going to be focusing on this palette over here. So basically, that is the overall UI of ArchiCAD 25 and ArchiCAD in general. We do have this small toolbar down the bottom, which is more focused on scale and display of materials, display of line types, and orientation of the actual project. It isn't something, again, I would dive too far into day one, but because it's predominantly set up correctly, so we'll focus more on the rest of ArchiCAD 25, more so than the general UI of useless or more advanced features that are way beyond day one users. Okay, so basically you've now understood the general parameters of where things are in ArchiCAD 25, what they do, how they're really used, and what is the purpose of them. But how do you actually go ahead and start drawing something on ArchiCAD? Well, we go back to our 3D objects over here and our 3D palette. It is the most critical one to use because ArchiCAD is a 3D modeling software. We want to be able to actually incorporate everything in 3D, or as much as we can. That's why, from a philosophical point of view at least, this sits higher up than this. 3D more important than 2D. Very simple way to remember that this is a 3D modeling program. So it's basically as simple as clicking, dragging, and dropping. If we click on our wall tool, we'll see our toolbar automatically changes. If we click on our door, again, it changes to that relevant item that we are using. So I'll click on a roof, once again, changes once more. So let's start as our wall tool, the most basic of all. We have our settings dialog box. If we click it and open that up, we have all of our settings for our wall. It dictates the height of that wall, the construction of that wall, what kind of material composites make it up, what the wall actually is. By default, ArchiCAD has plenty to choose from, more than enough. You probably won't need to create your own composite day one. How our wall interacts with other walls, how it stands, does it lean, where does it start at project 0, what it will look like and how it will perform on our floor plan and in section, and then any material overrides as well. We do have a structural analysis and a classifications and properties manager as well. However, again, not for day one users, just overcomplicating it. We don't really need to worry about anything there, so we'll just click escape. This is our layers tool. Basically, the layers tool is a very simple organization method. It allows you to put things on relevant layers the same way you do in Photoshop or Illustrator. If you've used either of those two programs, it lets you adjust things for different views. So if, for example, on the site plan, you want to see all the services and all the site relative information, you turn those layers on, but then you can turn them off on the ground floor or the first floor where you're trying to focus on something completely different. We can change all of those settings by simply clicking Control or Command and L for Larry, and you'll see we have our default model view layout settings over here. So if we were to click on our site plans, this would be activated. If we were to click on our floor plans, that would be activated, and individually we can adjust and change them. If, for example, I untick something, we can update that model view so it automatically updates it for everything. The alternative method to that is pressing Control L again, turning off the one thing we don't want to see just specifically in that view, pressing OK, coming down to that individual view's settings. So let's say we're on the ground floor plan and I've turned off those walls external. If I click settings and go get current window settings, it's going to save those settings just specifically for that view that I'm in right now, not for all the views associated with that template. So continuing on, I got a little bit sidetracked there with the layer system. The wall tool has a number of different options up the top. If you want it to be in a polygonal line, if you want it to be a single line, how you basically want to draw that wall. If you want to draw it as a circle, or if you want to draw it as a trapezoidal object, and it's basically just giving you a bit of freedom to adjust your wall shapes. Moving further across, we have where the inside or the outside face goes. Now, personally, I have it on the outside face, set as the outside face for a very simple reason. And I know that people have commented saying that they use the inside face on, that is their main point of reference and it's always the inside, but that is a completely different way of drawing. Everybody has their own standards around the world. So Take what I say with a pinch of salt and draw it however you want. But the reason I have it as outside face, drawing with the outside face, is because once it's submitted to council, the council has approved it. It can no longer move outside its parameters in a residential property without affecting another council requirement. So if, for example, a wall structure changes and it goes from a 90mm timber frame to a 120mm timber frame by the choice of either myself, the client, or anything else, it pushes the whole house inwards, and yes, you lose internal space, but the actual physical house doesn't move. So that's why I always keep it as outside face personally. This is basically more of the same settings that we saw in our Command T or our first dialog settings box over here, and it continues all the way across. It is a very simple way to really just go through it quicker, and you can scroll through those. Now, if we were to click on that wall tool again, learned everything at the top about that toolbar, we can then simply click once. You'll see our wall started to become drawn. If we think that external line, for example, now is on the bottom side, and say that is this section here is our internal of our house, it's the wrong way around, we can tap the P button, and now it's on the correct outside of the house. If we simply hold shift, it'll make sure it stays in a dead straight line. So clicking once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, we've drawn a very, very simple box that if we come into 3D, we can see exactly what we've drawn from the get-go. In 3D, orbiting, moving around, very simple. If you click the scroll wheel, you can pan. If you hold shift and the scroll wheel, you orbit. If you want to click our little man down the bottom and explore, we can basically play it like a video game. Move your mouse around to move the camera. WSD A moves it around. C and space moves it up and down, and you basically just move around. If you want to go a little bit faster, hold the shift key and it will move faster. If you want to go extremely faster, you can tap the greater than or less than symbol to see down the bottom here. I can't move my mouse at the same time, but just there where the speed button is, if I go greater than, my speed significantly increases, less than symbol, my speed decreases. So that's the general parameters of how you move around in 3D in ArchiCAD 25, and most likely all other ArchiCADs for a very long time, at least up until ArchiCAD 18 or something, as far back as I can remember personally, but I can't really vouch for any further than that. I do think it's very similar moving through all the ArchiCADs. Finally, if we jump back into our ground floor plan, we have the luxury and liberty of simply clicking on our door. If we go to our doors, we can change all of our settings, clicking through them to adjust them, to check them, to see them. Feel free to go through some of my other tutorials that are ArchiCAD 25, 24 in 30 minutes or 45 minutes to get a better understanding of what we need to change here and adjust to make it work. But we can close out of that, and simply, if I was to tap escape again, go door tool, line it up where I want it, click once, where does the door want to go, click twice, go back to 3D, here's my door. It's that simple and it's that easy. It's exactly the same principle with the windows. Again, the toolbar will have more options. Click once, click again, and there's our window completely finished, dropped into the wall, all done and dusted. And last but not least is our object tool. So if we click on our object tool and then go to our settings, we can search for a number of different objects already available in ArchiCAD. The most common are obviously going to be plumbing fixtures. So if we go WC, it'll give you the water closet 25 suite. So let's say I like that one, click OK, drop it in. Fantastic. Let's go back into our settings. Let's type in vanity, basin 25, I like that one, okay, drop it in. It's really simple to start getting objects into the project. If I click on that project, you'll see it's on the wrong layer though, it's on objects landscaping. I'd want that on MEP plumbing, and I'd want that on MEP plumbing as well. What you'll notice is it's just disappeared if that ever happens. We go into our settings, Command L, Control L, scroll down to that MEP plumbing, turn it on, click OK, and there it is. If we come back into 3D and pan around, we can see our toilet and our vanity basin are smack bang in the middle of the room. exactly how we drew them in 2D. Now, there isn't too much more I should really talk about in a day one video. This is probably a day 2 or 3 now that I'm getting into, but I'll just touch on it very briefly. What you'll see is our elevation and our section lines. Looking in our view map on the right hand side again, we can go down to sketch elevations and E01, E01, E02, E02. So whichever way these arrows point is the elevation we will be looking at. So as an example, let's click E01, it'll open up a new window and it'll show us that elevation of what we've created again in 3D, so we don't have to go back and draw it a million times over, changing every single line, changing every corner, and basically wasting so much time with 2D software. Anyway, that's all for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I apologize if it was a little bit less enthusiastic than usual. I've just come back from an incredibly long work trip and it's 7 p.m. in the middle of the week. I'm exhausted, but I have to get these videos out for you guys because I promise them to you every single Monday. So simply for that, I hope that encourages you to smash that subscribe button down below and also the like button. The like button helps with the YouTube algorithm, believe it or not. I know everybody says it, but you guys have been smashing it in recent times and this channel has been growing exponentially. So I know for a fact that that like button definitely contributes to the success of this channel. So thank you so much for being here, and as always, I'll see you next Monday.